This year, BSU is focusing on the connection of the civil rights movement and BLM protests as social unrest shook the public throughout 2020. After a video surfaced of a now former Minneapolis police officer, Devin Chauvin, kneeling on the neck of George Floyd for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, activists took to the streets to demand for justice. George Floyd, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, Eric Gardner, Sandra Bland, and countless other victims of police brutality.
One of the saddest truths about the racially driven brutalities of 2020 is that the victims were taken way too soon, and this painter conveys it perfectly. Seattle-based artist Adrian Brandon created his Stolen series, dozens of paintings to honor Black lives stolen by police brutality. Each year the victim lived equaled 1 minute Brandon painted. For example, George Floyd was killed at 46 years old, so Brandon painted his portrait for 46 minutes. As you can see, these paintings are nowhere near completion, which shows just how early their lives were taken from this world. I encourage you to look into Brandon's full collection, which you can find on his Instagram. But I also encourage you to reflect on these paintings, asking yourself how you can better protect your Black community during this new year.
The following comes from MLK's 1967 speech, The Other America. There are literally two Americas. One America is beautiful for situation, and, in a sense, this America is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity. This America is the habitat of millions of people who have food and material necessities for their bodies, and culture and education for their minds, and freedom and human dignity for their spirits. In this America, millions of people experience every day the opportunity of having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in all of their dimensions. And in this America, millions of young people grow up in the sunlight of opportunity. But tragically and unfortunately, there is another America. This other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms the ebulliency of hope into the fatigue of despair. In this America, millions of work-starved men walk the streets daily in search of jobs that do not exist. In this America, people are poor by the millions. They find themselves perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. In a sense, the greatest tragedy of this other America is what it does to little children. Little children in this other America are forced to grow up with clouds of inferiority forming every day in their little mental skies. As we look into this other America, we see it as an arena of blasted hopes and shattered dreams. Many people of various backgrounds live in this other America, but probably the largest group in this other America in proportion to its size in the population is the American Negro.
The American Negro finds himself in a triple ghetto: a ghetto of race, a ghetto of poverty, and a ghetto of human misery. So what we are seeking to do in the civil rights movement is to deal with this problem of two Americas. We are seeking to make America one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now let me say that the struggle for civil rights and the struggle to make these two Americas one America is much more difficult today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. In a sense, this was a struggle for decency. We could not go to a lunch counter and get a hamburger. Public transportation was segregated, and we often had to sit in the back or had to stand over empty seats because sections were reserved for whites only. And we didn't have the right to vote in many areas of the South. But by the thousands, we protested these conditions. We made it clear that it was ultimately more honorable to accept jail cell experiences than to accept segregation and humiliation. When they were sitting at those lunch counters, they were in reality standing up for the best in the American dream and seeking to take the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers in the formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our country which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. In a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these reoccurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention.